Whispering Chicken presents. Fade in. Miss Jones emerged from the front door of the little chapel. As the last of the sunlight disappeared, it was deepening the shade of red her dress was colored. Stopping just outside, she turned to look inside, encouraging someone to join her. Reaching out her hand, a small one came out of the doorway to take hold of Miss Jones. Slowly the woman led 6 young boys, all stark naked but healthy, out of the old wooden building. As if the ground beneath was lifting them up, more people, adults mostly, rose from the earth, also nude. Roughly 1.5 dozen people stood randomly, studying their surroundings with a perplexed expression on their faces. One, Miss Jones, left the others behind and moved towards the border, where she took up watch on a large boulder. And from this vantage point, one sliver of blazing red left the sunset and hovered over Tempest. Tapping the imaginary watch on her wrist, the woman in red raised her eyebrows at you, then pointed higher in the sky. Something, or some things, were descending on Tempest. The lower they came, the larger they were, and not very large. About 2 dozen there were, domes of glowing red lowering the things, whatever they were. And then the sunset left, and the domes were now an incandescent white, and the things they lowered were men and women wearing dark suits. Rising above the land and looking down, the parachutes formed a pattern being duplicated by white dots on the map of the evening weather forecast airing at that moment. Clumsy Hippo's morning cereal. Days of General Restlessness. Number 6. Number 6. As the whoomp-whoomp of the helicopter departing was cut off by the door, closing on the roof of central tower of the knowledge complex, a temporary lady-in-waiting was chatting with primary school teacher Dame Maggie Smith. Lifting her brocade skirts in one hand, Maggie took the hand of her companion. "Did you enjoy your little break?" asked the young woman. "We missed having you around." Dame Maggie clucked. "I'm inclined to say you're being kind, if that were possible. Every year I make a point of being home for the Golden Globes and the Oscars. It wouldn't be as fun if they believed something more pressing prevented my attendance." Maggie's guide began to laugh heartily at that, at which the star rolled her eyes. Then, when she took a breath, the lady-in-waiting gasped and grabbed her throat. "How long do you think this will take?" asked Dame Maggie. Turning to the teacher, the woman was looking her in the eyes until they began to roll. Her body fell to the side, somersaulting over the railing to the next lower level. As her back hit the wall, a piece of hard candy flew from her mouth. Standing, the girl fumbled to the railing and broke through, tumbling down the center shaft of the stairwell, face breaking a railing 2 floors down, spraying blood everywhere. Dame Maggie crinkled her nose, then fumbled in a beaded clutch for a cell phone. Dialing, she raised the phone until it was just short of her ear. "Principal Blackman," she inquired. "I am in need of assistance 1.5 floors down from the top of the tower." After a pause, she said, "She went on ahead." Then another pause. "Now there's no need to feel as if you need to rush to my stair. I can occupy my time calling my agent." A shorter pause, then, "Yes. See you shortly, then." Glancing down the shaft, she added, "Oh, and maybe a doctor should accompany you, but I wouldn't get my hopes up." The Countess scanned the part of the lobby in view from the top of the baby grand staircase. With a huff, the woman tied the yellow velvet housecoat closed and proceeded to descend the stairs. About halfway down there was a sound of 2 pops of metal, followed by 2 clips of hair falling on either side of her feet on the stairs. From there the Countess saw Skye behind the front desk. She had paperwork in front of her, but her gaze was fixed somewhere non-existent, hovering before the owner of Wisham's B&B. Skye jumped at the clear, loud voice of Gretchen Young. "Madam, might I inquire if you have seen Sissy playing down here? It always seems to be absent lately." At that, the Countess took another look around the lobby, causing Skye to join in, who looked slightly relieved the answer was an easy one. "I'm sorry, Countess, I haven't seen her since she left. Quite early this morning, actually." Stomping the heel of a mule on the wooden floor, the Countess complained, "What has gotten into it?" After staring at the front door as if it were about to open, the woman sighed. "This is all so disconcerting. I really don't think I'll be able to check out today. Would you be dear, Miss Monroe, and extend my stay another day?" Managing a weak smile, Skye answered, "No problem, Countess. Consider it done." Pulling a pencil from her unkempt hair, Skye jotted down a note for herself, but more for the Countess, who watched every word written until it was done. Nodding, Gretchen turned and thanked Skye, stopping halfway up the stairs to look down at the 2 hair clumps. Opening the hem of her housecoat, the woman proceeded to glide up the rest of the stairs, leaving each step empty as the coat swept along behind the Countess. Turning to enter the office, Skye stopped and frowned. Camille was peeking out of the spa again, but this time she kept checking her watch. Looking away from the front window, the Frenchwoman's eyes found Skye looking at her, waving. "I was expecting a delivery from Melt's," Camille explained before Skye could ask. "Okay," said Skye. "What is it with French and cheese?" she asked. As Camille went back into the spa, she called out, "And wine! Don't forget the wine!" In the office, Skye sat at her desk and found a note she had written for herself earlier. First guest to check out had said it looked like something had fallen into the parking lot. Looking out the windows to the back patio, the bushes obscured too much of the winding stairs and the parking lot below. It took a whole turn on the stairs before Skye saw it as she went down. It looked like some sort of chair, not like anything Skye was familiar with, but it did actually seem kind of familiar. Reaching the bottom of the stairs, looking at the object reminded Skye of a piece of coconut with a shell attached, except instead of a brown shell, this was purple, and instead of white coconut, the interior was gray. Curious, the woman approached it. There were no legs, but it did have diamond patterns cut into the shell. Something red was stuck in a cutout. Testing the gray cushion, Skye remarked, "Not cushiony at all." Lifting the edge some, she then said, "Not big enough for an adult to sit in." Suddenly 2 things became apparent. The red thing stuck in the object was a rose petal, and the object was upside down. This isn't a small chair. It's an oversized protective helmet. Turning her eyes up at the house, Skye looked at the rose bushes on either side of the patio, the only ones they had planted. From that parking area, a metal staircase rose about 45 feet to the patio. From there, the bed and breakfast rose 6 floors, revealing a roof of steep angles, all but unseen from Skye's point of view. Just south of center was the oldest chimney among the chimney points, a circle of stones which had not had any smoke pass through them in quite a while. Unfortunately, someone had wanted something to pass through the opening. Bent in half, the soles of the boys' shoes were just a fraction above the rim of the chimney. Having gotten it this far, it looked as if several attempts were made to punch or kick at the body to move it lower, but obviously they gave up. His face had turned at some point, but with his left arm behind the body, there was a clear bullet wound in the front of his shirt, and there was also a dried ribbon of blood descending from the hole. Sitting in a chair, cape draped over everything from the neck down, the brown-haired man was watching Lucine Hatfield in the mirror as she made bold, confident cuts to his hair. Since they were no longer strangers, it was easy to steer the conversation towards her feud with the barber, Poke Floyd. As the woman spoke, the man watched another man in the mirror who was reading a People as he waited. If not for the button-down white dress shirt, he might just be a shadow. Lucine regained the attention of the chapel man when Delilah fetched the other customer for a shampoo. Of course, everything began before we were around, the most famous feud. His mother was McCoy, you see. Well, we got to know each other in school, but we made the mistake of getting married, which turned Poke into an insufferable dick. Scissors seemed to be getting a bit snippier. Said leaving was for the best before he mashed my mouth. Lightly blowing a few hairs off of his lip, the man getting his hair cut noted. Yet there is still a tension. Lucine had a good laugh at that. Tension? Poke is batshit crazy. One minute he's not only stalking me and trying to control me again. Next is when he reignites the fuel of the ages. Lucine lowered her voice. One time, my Siamese cat, Frou-Frou, went missing. About the same time Poke did. But it wasn't odd when his brother Jab came to visit. Didn't open the shop for 2 days, though, which is odd. That's when I came home, and there was Frou-Frou waiting for me in the foyer. It was such a relief. The hairdresser stopped short and held the back of her free hand over her mouth for a second. But she never moved. He wouldn't, her client declared. Watery eyes, Lucine stabbed the air with the scissors in her hand. Jab is a fucking taxidermist. Remembering what she had been doing, Lucille looked at the brown-haired man's face in the mirror. Where was I? She asked him. Throwing the cape away, the man stood and told the confused woman, Actually, it's perfect. Wouldn't change a thing. Oh, Lucy said, then eased into her role. Well, I told you I could handle the job. Smiling, her hand now held a brush she used for sweeping his shoulders. Glancing one more at the suited man getting a haircut from Delilah, the brown-haired man placed 3 maple leaves into Lucine's hands, then, fishing a handful of glass marbles from the inside pocket of his jacket, he placed 2 atop the leaves in her hand and returned the rest to his pocket. Oh my, thank you. Then, lowering her voice, this time a bit lower, she told him, I look forward to the next meeting. Behind the hairdresser, Delilah was craning her neck to see what was happening, adorned with a scowl. There was no need for Poke Floyd to open the door of his barber shop so he could see outside. In fact, the entire front of the place was a glass window, like a dead hair showroom. The man with brown hair had just come out of Lucine's, sporting a haircut so nice the barber couldn't help but grumble and mumble disappointedly. Before Poke could turn and return to his customer, the 2 metal tracks of the tram rolled out as the coil passed by, leaving a track in its wake. As the front end continued to unravel, a single-passenger tram zipped by with Smoosh Weinstock standing inside. One hand was raised to hold a handle, while the other supported a greasy-bottomed cardboard box with several white bags inside. A few seconds later, the back end of the track came as another coil rolled itself up, leaving the street clean. Without changing size, the front and back coils led the tram around a corner 3 blocks away. The barber gasped, seeing the brown-haired man looking both ways in preparation for crossing the street. His hair really was cut very well, irritating Poke to no end. Before turning away, Poke's eyes glanced in the beauty parlor's doorway where Lucine was glaring at him. Back behind his client in the chair, Poke really only had a few more cuts to make when the door opened. With a nod, the mysterious man sat and studied the magazines, choosing the widely distributed book of Bible stories for children. He found great humor in the tales in between glances at the other 2. Don't get many women, the barber said as he brushed the woman free of stray hairs. Really only know this one cut for them. The woman in a white blouse and dark suit turned her head back and forth while studying herself in the mirror. It's a Dorothy Hamill? She asked. Helping the woman to her feet, the barber answered, Well, we'd call it the Moe, or for children, the Joey Lawrence. Noticing her watching the man behind Poke, he turned to find the man still giggling at the pictures in the book. As the man sat in the barber chair, Poke was startled when the television turned itself on, and to a cable channel which Barber had yet to get. A science fiction show was playing, and his client said, Oh yeah, I love Doctor Who. Poke Floyd was much more comfortable when he was doing it high and tight, so he hardly registered when the conversation casually slipped to the subject of his feud with Lucine. Gently, the man pressed the barber to explain how it began. With the 2 of you, of course, he said. We know the family history. Poke continued to trim for a minute or 2, after which he shut the clippers off and set them down on the counter. Removing a pair of scissors from a jar of blue liquid, Poke froze in thought before admitting, Lucine Hatfield killed a McCoy. This is unforgivable. I have no choice. With my brother gone, also, no other McCoys are around. It sure seems to be taking you forever, the man with a good bit less brown hair commented. It must be very difficult. For a moment, the only sounds were the blades of scissors meeting and separating, and then the strange customer asked, If no other McCoys are lurking, from whom did she take a life? As if in a pattern, Poke set the scissors down on the counter, picked up the brush, and simply stopped, a seldom-seen sadness in his expression. Our baby, he finally said. Then, snapping back from the spell, he went to finish with the haircut. When the door to Wisham's B&B opened, Skye lifted her head from the front desk and turned her swollen red eyes towards it. The woman was relieved to find it was Shonda Westinghouse, one of the two housekeepers, and Bruce, the security guard, as well as a junior deputy for the sheriff. The couple were giddy from their lunch date. Emotionless, Skye watched Bruce bend Shonda back for a romantic kiss. Bruce passed back out through the door as Shonda walked across the lobby, pale as snow, deep red hair and French braids on either side of her head, which then went partway down her back. Opening the apron she carried, the woman wore jeans, kids, and a green crop top. Skye smiled at Shonda and said, "Leave Honey in the doctor's rooms again today, Shonda. The police haven't had a chance to come and have a look around yet." When the apron had gone around the housekeeper's head, she was smiling even more. "Nice," Shonda said. "I can get to Lucine's for a mani-pedi and a car wash." "What about Camille?" Skye asked of her employee. Shonda noticeably stiffened, her demeanor changing. "I don't really know her yet," she answered while gazing towards the spa. Parting ways, the housekeeper proceeded up the stairs. Skye pondered the exchange and was startled to find a brown-haired man suddenly standing at the front desk. He was oddly familiar to Skye, but in a memory she knew had been purposely buried. "Can I help you?" she asked the man. "Sissy Young?" he asked, his voice relaxing the tension in Skye. With a quick call, she told the man where to find Sissy, and he silently crossed to and climbed the baby grand staircase. Whoever you were, wherever you were within the limits of Tempest, it was time for dinner. Miss Jones stood in her red dress at the main border eating an apple. Without much reaction, the woman watched an Uber Eats driver pass quickly through the welcome arch. The faded red, rattling Yugo took the high road until the driver was passing Wisham's to where there was nothing but trees lining the increasingly barely a road. Eventually there was a side road which had a fallen tree blocking the way at about 50 feet. Here's where the driver stopped and exited the car. Before too long, there came the sounds of many zippers being pulled. The driver noticed it happen along the trunk of one of the medium-sized trees. No less than a dozen similar trees began to deflate once the dark-suited FBO agents had emerged from them. They each rolled up their tree while one was inflating a table and some chairs. Startling the driver, a female agent stepped up and out of the deflating fallen tree at his feet. "Delivery for spies?" she asked, while inflating her purse. None of them noticed further along the diminishing road when the mysterious brown-haired man emerged from the trees on the right side of the road. With barely a glance towards the uninhabitants, he crossed the road's remnants to disappear into the trees. The breathing in the dark was coming in various strings. Someone had a whistle to their exhale. Fabric began to shift against fabric until it was a symphony. The air was still and stagnant, growing warmer by the moment. "Principal Blackman," came the British voice of Dame Maggie Smith, elementary school teacher. "Are these surprise parties completely necessary? In waiting, I often find myself questioning what I'm being touched by in the dark." Addressing the group, she added, "Now that was wholly unnecessary." "Don't worry, middle school teacher," Shirley Hemphill assured her colleague. "We arranged a reason to come here quickly." Mighty Blackman, principal, whispered loudly, "Shut up, I hear someone." "Well," Dame Maggie commented, "surely is one way to ask." Someone shushed her. Then they all heard voices on the other side of the closed door. Barely able to contain herself, Biffany, music teacher, squeaked, "Oh my God, I'm so excited." "This is always my favorite part," chimed in Grease, shop teacher. Dame Maggie asked the room, "Was it difficult never having enough surprise birthday parties in your youth?" Without warning, the door was open, and everyone screamed as they shielded their eyes from the light shining in from the school's hall. The woman standing there began to scream, as did the man and woman behind her. How would one expect to find 8 to 10 people overstuffing the inside of a janitorial closet? Once everything had calmed down, the mishmash of people inside the closet inhaled and then began to sing happy birthday to the woman facing them. The man behind her said, "Let me see," to which she answered, "Shush, this one's mine, you'll get yours." When the group had finished singing, the woman began to turn to the side, as did the man and other woman in rotation, and together they rotated because they were conjoined triplets. Sadly, Semper, and Sorry, King, connected at the coccyx with shared migrating turds. The group sang the song again to the man, and then to their sister, at which point the three janitors were able to climb atop the others, closing the door behind them. Down the hall and to the left would lead to the base of the tower with the helipad atop it. The second and third floors housed the administration offices of the school. Descending the stairs from the offices was the brown-haired man. Reaching the bottom, he made his way through the Hot Topic and left by way of an emergency exit. From the edge of the plateau, the woman in red stood with her back to the True Love property, waiting for the sun to begin coloring the sky. Once it had, Miss Jones took a step forward so that her toes breached the edge. Turning her gaze downwards, she saw that they had begun their second wave. Far below, men and women in dark suits and already wearing sunglasses were climbing the face of the plateau edge. Flinging one rubbery arm, a sticky hand stretched upwards and smacked onto the rock surface, where it stuck. Hand by hand, they pulled themselves higher, as a group, in unison. The woman at the border did nothing. She knew this would not be allowed. This approach was off limits. When a rumbling came, she smiled, and the agents below stopped. Rock and earth began to crack around the invaders, falling away in chunks the size of heads. The lower agents had to block the chunks as they fell, and one of the woman agents fell with them. Suddenly, a crack appeared at once, circling the group. The stone they clung to was pushed outwards about 3 feet. This circle of stone started to crumble, and like an avalanche, the rock, dirt, and bodies started to drop. Stepping off the edge, Miss Jones dropped, joining the melange that fell. The thought was feeling concerned at the present nature of the townsfolk. Things had reached a point where the wrong element would come here and cause harm or death, maybe even taxes. Things would need to change to protect the town and residents. Soon the five will take their journey to memory and truth. This was of no concern to the thought any more. And then the thought was sure it saw a memory. It had been a while since last seeing the man here. However, the thought easily went back to that first time. It was when the five were growing. Their desire to leave had all but left them. There was still much of the area they had not explored. Deep in the woods, the thought discovered that someone had erected a small chapel. Wondering, it saw a brown-haired man emerge from the building. There was a familiarity about his energy, but the thought did not recognize this form. As he walked through the trees, the thought followed, coming to something else now. The bent trunks of 8 trees stretched away from each other as they supported the weight of a giant wooden sphere. Like the shadow from a flickering candle, the sphere began to make little jumps away from and back to the trees. Briefly surrounding the man, it jumped back into the trees, then 2 more times before the man was gone, and the sphere remained where it was. Shonda Westinghouse came into the house belonging to her and her twin sister Sheila. Both worked at Wishrams as housekeepers. Throwing her purse onto the marble top of the kitchen island, the woman threw away the toe separators from her pedicure. Then she grabbed a banana and moved towards the walk-in refrigerator. Going to the back of the fridge, the woman placed the banana on a shelf to the right. Grabbing hold of the back shelves, Shonda moved the unit to the left a few feet, giving her space to fit beside it. Instead of the same metal of the rest of the refrigerator walls, this was a rolling door, which the twin rolled up and open. Stepping into the space, a light came on when she pulled a string. Her red hair disappeared as she descended a set of stairs. In a small concrete room was a metal cage sitting off-center of the floor. A mound inside was covered with a tarp, and recently some liquid had streamed from the cage to the drain in the center of the floor. Shonda threw the banana, and it made a thud against the bars. The tarp moved, pulled away, to reveal another young red-haired woman, frail and sickly. I had a date with Bruce tonight, said the woman outside the cage. This is so much easier than I thought it would be. I'm going to have it all. Everything. Sheila, the caged woman said weakly, you won't be able to keep it up much longer. Stepping up to the cage, the healthier woman blurted out, Didn't you hear me, Shonda? I will have everything. At the TTV anchor desk, Bert Ruger rested his face in one hand while drumming his fingers on the desk with the other. Anchor Sabrina McMillan actually had her head down facing the monitor, where there was a view of people beginning to gather just north of downtown. One of these roads in that direction leads to the large forest. A man with brown hair was weaving through the crowd from the left side of the screen to the right and beyond. Winston could be heard off-screen. Really? How big? Is that extra? No, it won't take long. There was a scratchy noise as someone's hand covered the microphone. When it stopped, it was quiet until Winston stepped into the frame. You bet, Lisa. No, I mean Sabrina. Something is happening. I don't know how these people found out about it, but if this is what I hear it is, believe it or not, it's my first, and for once am happy to be here. Neither anchor moved, having taken their earphone out or fallen asleep. Winston laughed heartily. No, I doubt it's that, Bert, but keep dreaming. Behind the reporter, the crowd became quiet. Winston spun around and the camera began to move with him towards what Winston supposed to be the front of the crowd. There are figures emerging from the trees about 50 feet deep, Winston reported, tripping over someone's lounge chair. Shit, he cried, before Peppo Crapo helped the man to his feet. With an unimpeded view, the crowd seemed to see Winston as a front line not to be crossed. Yes, Winston said excitedly, people are arriving. Yes, they are naked, dirt-caked. Facing the camera, the reporter declared, It appears we have a returning. People in the small crowd squinted at the approaching figures, anxious to see what they looked like. The expressions on the new arrivals' faces were apprehensive, a bit confused, but not fear. Everyone was smiling now to help them feel at ease. A few townsfolk took a step forward when it happened. One of the arrivals was whisked away. Everyone froze and became silent. With a whizzing sound, a bent shining rod shot through the trees into the naked ones, hooking the face of the man in front before he was whisked away. Someone was screaming, and a couple of more thought it was a good idea, but mostly began to run away. Each hook that came and took a person was accompanied by Winston's weak, stunned voice. Oh shit. Oh shit. Oh shit. Today's cast: The Woman in Red from last night, Miss Jones. Naked Earth Sprouts, The Returning. White Dots, FBO. Doomed Temp, Flo from Progressive. Unraveling Countess, Gretchen Young. Distraught B&B owner, Sky Monroe. Sketchy Spa Manager, Camille Poisson. Body in Chimney, Rocky Monroe. Mysterious Man, The Brown-Haired Man. Hairdresser, Lucine Hatfield. Salon Customer, Male FBO Spy. Salon Employee, Delilah Do-Right. Barber, Polk Floyd. Commuter, Smoosh Weinstock. Barber's Attempt, Female FBO Agent. Housekeeper, Shonda Westinghouse. Junior Deputy, Security and Date, Bruce. Uber Eats Driver, Elon Musk. Middle school teacher, Shirley Hemphill. School principal, Whitey Blackman. Music teacher, Biffany Whitish. Shop teacher, Grease Travolta. Conjoined triplet janitors, Sadly, Semper, and Sorry King. Shonda Westinghouse, Sheila Westinghouse. Woman in Cage, Shonda Westinghouse. Board co-anchor, Bruce Ruger. Napping anchor, Sabrina McMillan. Randy old reporter, Winston Granville. Helping hand, Pepto Crapo. And the Thought. With special guest, Dame Maggie Smith as Dowager Countess of Granville as Dame Maggie Smith. The moon was high in the sky and bright, but not enough to drown out the glow emanating from the tilted little chapel. Inside, the pews were filling. 4 more had joined in worship, praise, and revenge. Miss Jones came out of the hole in the back of the church. When she came from behind a screen, everyone in attendance sat upright. Choosing Lucine first, she motioned for the woman to join her. Lucine looked like she had just been called on the stage for The Price is Right. Tilting her head back to look behind the screen, Miss Jones turned back, smiling. Extending her right hand behind the screen, it returned holding a gun, similar to a shotgun, except instead of double parallel barrels, one barrel swiveled in the hand of the woman in red, creating 3 barrels. Some might say it was a cross, some a lowercase letter T. Behind the screen, with a pile of impossible guns, the man with brown hair waits for Miss Jones. Looking at you, he gives a hearty salute by tipping the gun barrels to his forehead. Fade out. Return to Clumsy Hippo's morning cereal in 2 weeks. For the next part, Days of General Restlessness. Because it never ends.